Welcome to subscribe.
The first time I felt the letter crinkle in my graduation gown pocket, I thought it was just a misplaced receipt. You know that feeling, right? When your fingers touch something you weren't expecting, and for a split second, everything's still fine. I was standing backstage at the Memorial Auditorium, surrounded by 200 other nursing students in navy blue robes. The air smelled like hairspray and nervous sweat. Someone's mom was already crying in the third row, and the sound system kept crackling with feedback. Dean Henderson walked past me and squeezed my shoulder. "Emma, you look pale. You okay, honey?" "Yeah," I said. "Just graduation jitters." She gave me that look, the one she'd been giving me for 4 years, ever since I walked into her office as a freshman who could barely afford textbooks. "You earned this. Every bit of it." I smiled, but my hand was still in my pocket, touching that folded piece of paper. "See, here's the thing about my family. The Brooks family. We're not bad people. My dad, Mike, worked 30 years at the John Deere plant before he got laid off last spring. My mom, Linda, runs the church bake sale every single month like it's the freaking Olympics. My older brother Richie, well, Richie's always been the star. The one with the big ideas. The one who was gonna disrupt the logistics industry, whatever the hell that meant. And me? I was the steady one. The one who never asked for anything. The one who worked night shifts at the nursing home, who drove a 12-year-old Corolla with a dent in the passenger door, who ate ramen 3 nights a week so I could save money. Money that was supposed to be in my tuition account. 3 days before graduation, I checked the balance. I don't know why I checked, maybe I just wanted to see that beautiful zero, proof that I'd made it, proof that the struggle was over. But it wasn't zero. It was negative $58,000. With a big red payment overdue stamp from the bursar's office. I stared at that screen for maybe 10 minutes. Then I called the bank. Then I called the bursar. Then I sat on the floor of my dorm room and just breathed. The money had been withdrawn. In chunks. 5,000 here, 10,000 there, always on a Friday afternoon when the bank was about to close. The last withdrawal was 2 weeks ago. My parents had come up to take me to dinner, and Mom hugged me so tight I felt guilty for ever doubting them. Of course, that was before I knew about the shell company. Richie's Shell Company. Next Gen Logistics Solutions. Registered in Delaware. 0 employees. 0 revenue. And a bank account that just happened to receive exactly $57,800 in transfers from my college fund over the past 18 months. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just started printing everything. Bank statements. Transfer records. Screenshots of Richie's LinkedIn where he described himself as a serial entrepreneur disrupting last-mile delivery. Even the fake testimonial video he made with actors pretending to be satisfied customers. I put it all in a folder. And then I wrote a letter. But we'll get to that. So there I was, standing backstage, my hand wrapped around a crinkled piece of paper that was about to blow my entire family apart. The first person to find me was my roommate, Jess. Jess is from Chicago, loud and loyal and the kind of person who will tell you you're being an idiot even while she's driving you to the airport at 4 in the morning. She was already in her robe, her cap tilted at exactly the angle Dean Henderson told us not to use. "You look like crap," she said. "What's wrong?" I couldn't even say it. I just handed her the letter. She read it. Her mouth got tight. "Emma. Your parents did this? With Richie? The startup brother? The one who wears those stupid sneakers and calls himself a founder at Thanksgiving dinner? That's the one." She handed the letter back to me like it was radioactive. "What are you gonna do?" And that was the question, wasn't it? What was I gonna do? Call the cops? Go to the news? Sue my own family? Or just keep quiet, like I always did, because we're family and they didn't mean it and Richie's gonna pay you back someday? Before I could answer, I heard them. My family, filing into their seats in the auditorium. Dad's booming laugh. Mom's nervous chatter. And Richie's voice, telling someone on his phone that the funding round is almost closed, bro. Funding round. He meant my college fund. The thing you gotta understand about my dad is he's not a villain. He's just a man who spent his whole life tightening bolts on a factory line, watching guys with college degrees walk into offices while he came home with grease under his fingernails. He wanted something different for his son. Something bigger. And my mom, God, my mom just wanted Dad to be happy. She would have set her own house on fire if he told her it was a good idea. But I was their daughter. And I was supposed to be the one who understood. The one who would forgive. The ceremony started. The choir sang some hymn I don't remember. The valedictorian talked about chasing dreams and overcoming obstacles. I sat there in my folding chair, the letter burning a hole in my pocket, and I could feel my whole life splitting into two paths. Path 1, stand up, walk across that stage, get my degree, smile for the photos, and spend the next 10 years paying off a debt I never created while Richie called himself an entrepreneur. Path 2, do something I'd never done before. Something that would make them see me. When my row stood up to get in line for the diploma walk, Jess grabbed my arm. Whatever you decide, she whispered, I've got your back. I nodded. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold on to my program. The line moved forward. 3 students ahead of me, a girl named Maria walked across the stage and her whole family cheered. 2 students ahead, a guy from my clinical group, and his dad was recording on his phone. 1 student ahead, and I could see Dean Henderson standing at the podium, the stack of diplomas neat and white on the table beside her. Then it was my turn. Emma Brooks, the announcer said. I stepped forward. The auditorium lights were so bright I couldn't see the audience, but I knew exactly where my family was sitting. I'd made sure of it. Section B, row 7, seats 4 through 6. Dean Henderson reached for a diploma. But instead of handing it to me, she looked down at the podium. There was a letter there, my letter, with the Brooks family crest printed on the envelope. We don't actually have a family crest. I just printed a picture of Dad's old Ford truck on it. Emma, Dean Henderson said, her voice quiet but carrying through the microphone. This letter was delivered to my office this morning. It's addressed to you. I took it. The same letter I'd mailed 3 weeks ago. Would you like to open it? She asked. Now? The auditorium went silent. I could hear someone coughing in the back row. I could hear my own heart beating. And then I heard my dad's voice from the audience, confused and starting to get angry. What's this about? Emma? What's going on? I looked out into the lights, toward the sound of his voice. I couldn't see him, but I knew exactly what his face looked like right now, that mix of confusion and defensiveness he got whenever something didn't go according to his plan. It's about the money, Dad, I said. My voice didn't shake. I don't know why. It's about the $58,000 you took from my tuition account. Someone gasped. A few people stood up to see better. I heard my mom's voice, shrill and panicked, Emma, sweetheart, let's talk about this privately. No, I said. We're gonna talk about it now. Dean Henderson stepped aside. She gave me the microphone. And in row 7, I finally saw them. My dad, his face turning red. My mom, clutching her purse like it was a life raft. And Richie, my big brother, sliding down in his seat like he was trying to disappear into the upholstery. They had no idea what was coming next. None of them did. Because the letter in my hand wasn't just a complaint. It wasn't just evidence. It was a choice I'd made 3 weeks ago, sitting on my dorm room floor, with bank statements spread out around me like pieces of a broken mirror. I unfolded the paper. I looked at Dean Henderson. She nodded once, steady and sure, like a judge giving permission for the truth. Go ahead, Emma, she said. We're all listening. I raised the microphone. And I started to read. The microphone hummed against my lips. 2,000 people in that auditorium went dead quiet, and I could feel every single one of them leaning forward in their seats. Not because I was some kind of speaker. Hell, I'd spent 4 years of nursing school trying to stay invisible. But when a girl stands up in her cap and gown and says she's got a letter about $58,000 that went missing, people listen. I looked down at the paper in my hand. It was wrinkled from being folded and unfolded 100 times, sitting in my nightstand drawer next to old grocery receipts and a half-empty bottle of melatonin. 3 months ago I'd typed it up on my laptop at 3 in the morning, tears dripping onto the keyboard, because I finally couldn't pretend anymore. Dear Dean Henderson, I read, my voice steadier than I expected. My name is Emma Brooks. I am supposed to graduate this May with a Bachelor of Science in Nursing, but as of today, my student account shows an outstanding balance of $57,800. I did not spend this money. I did not take out any additional loans. The funds were removed from my tuition account over a period of 18 months, without my knowledge or consent, by individuals who had access to my financial records. Row 7 shifted like a boat in rough water. My dad's face had gone from red to a kind of purple-gray, the color of storm clouds over a cornfield. My mom wasn't clutching her purse anymore, she had one hand over her mouth and the other reaching for my dad's arm. And Richie, my big brother, the genius entrepreneur who was gonna make us all rich, he'd stopped sliding down in his chair. Mostly because there was nowhere lower to go. I kept reading. The individuals in question are Michael and Linda Brooks, my parents. They used a joint account set up when I was 17 to transfer funds into a business account belonging to my brother, Richard Brooks, doing business as NextGen Logistics Solutions. Somebody in the back gasped. I heard a woman whisper, "Oh, sweet Jesus." Graduation caps turned left and right like a field of black dominoes. I didn't look up. I just held on to that paper like it was the only thing keeping me from floating off the stage. Dean Henderson stood off to my right, her arms crossed, her face giving away nothing. But I'd seen her earlier that morning, before the ceremony, when I'd come to her office with my folder full of bank statements and the recording on my phone. She'd listened for 40 minutes without interrupting. And at the end, she'd said, "Emma, most students in your position just disappear. They go home, they take the L, they spend 10 years paying off a debt they never created. Why are you different?" I'd told her the truth. Because I'm not going home. 3 weeks before graduation, I'd been sitting on the floor of my dorm room, eating cold mac and cheese out of a Tupperware container, when my phone buzzed. It was an email from the bursar's office. Final notice, your account balance of $57,800 must be resolved before you can receive your diploma or participate in commencement ceremonies. I remember staring at that number for a solid 5 minutes, waiting for it to change. Like maybe if I squinted hard enough it would turn into a 0. It didn't. So I did what any broke college student with a nursing exam in 2 hours does, I called my mom. "Oh, honey, it's probably just a paperwork mix-up," she'd said, her voice all honey and no bees. "Your father will call them Monday morning, I promise. Now tell me about your clinicals, how's that nice Dr. Patel you were working with?" That was the first lie. Or maybe it was the 5th or the 15th, I don't know anymore. But it was the one that broke something loose in my chest, like a rusted bolt finally giving way. I hung up the phone, opened my laptop, and logged into the account my parents had helped me set up when I was 17. The joint account. The one that was supposed to hold my college fund, my scholarship money, the small loans I'd taken out under my own name. What I found made me throw up in the communal bathroom trash can. 5 withdrawals. $10,000 in August of my junior year. $12,500 in December. $15,000 the following March. $11,300 in June. Another $9,000 in September. Every single one of them transferred to an account labeled NBLS Holdings LLC, which a quick Google search confirmed was the shell company my brother Richie had been bragging about on Instagram for 2 years. Disrupting the logistics space. Scaling to 6 figures by Q4. Hustle culture, baby. He hadn't scaled anything. What he'd done was burn through 58 grand of his little sister's tuition money while she worked double shifts at a campus cafeteria and volunteered at an animal shelter on weekends because she couldn't afford to go home for Thanksgiving. I sat on that bathroom floor for an hour, wiping my face with paper towels, and then I started making phone calls. Not to my parents. To the bank. To the bursar's office. To a lawyer's assistant named Carla who took pity on me and walked me through the difference between a joint account and a custodial account. Honey, Carla had said, if your name's on that account, you've got every right to those statements. Print everything. Download everything. And don't tell a soul what you're doing. I didn't. The letter went on for another page and a half. Dates, amounts, account numbers. I read every single digit out loud into that microphone, and with every number, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger exactly. More like a valve finally being released, the pressure hissing out into the open air where it couldn't crush me anymore. Next-Gen Logistics Solutions, I read, looking up for the first time, straight at my brother, was dissolved by the state of Ohio on March 2nd of this year. For failure to file tax returns. The company's assets, according to public records, totaled less than $800 at the time of dissolution. Richie looked like a man who'd just been told his parachute was a backpack full of laundry. His mouth opened and closed twice before he managed to choke out, that's not public information. It is, actually, I said. You just have to know where to look. My dad stood up. For a second I thought he was gonna walk out, but instead he turned around and faced the audience, his arms spread wide like a quarterback trying to calm the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this is a family misunderstanding. My daughter is clearly upset, and she has every right to be, but this is not the time or the place. Sit down, Mr. Brooks. That was Dean Henderson. She hadn't raised her voice at all, but the tone of it cut through the room like a scalpel through gauze. My dad froze. My mom started crying. And somewhere in the back of the auditorium, a door opened and two people walked in. One of them was a campus security officer. The other was a woman in a navy blue suit, carrying a briefcase. I recognized her. Her name was Patricia Okonkwo, and she was a fraud investigator from the credit union where my parents had opened that joint account. Dean Henderson had made a phone call that morning, right after I'd left her office. She hadn't told me about it. I hadn't asked her to. But she'd made it anyway, and now here was the cavalry, walking down the center aisle like they had all the time in the world. Ms. Okonkwo didn't come up on stage. She just stood at the foot of the steps, caught my eye, and gave me the smallest nod. It said everything I needed to hear. You're not alone in this. The paper trail is solid. And the people who stole from you are about to find out what happens when the bank gets involved. I looked back at my family. My dad had sat down again, but he wasn't looking at me. He was staring at his hands like he'd never seen them before. My mom was still crying, her mascara running in two thin black rivers down her cheeks. And Richie had his phone out. He was scrolling through something, his face getting whiter by the second. I found out later what he was looking at. His business partner, a guy named Derek who'd supposedly been handling the operations side of NextGen, had posted a statement on LinkedIn about an hour before graduation started. Effective immediately, I am severing all ties with Richard Brooks and NextGen Logistics Solutions. Any investors or stakeholders with concerns about the company's handling of funds are encouraged to contact me directly. It got 47 comments in the first 30 minutes, most of them from people Richie had borrowed money from. I finished reading the letter at 3:17 p.m., according to the clock above the auditorium doors. When I folded the paper and set it down on the podium, the silence was so complete I could hear the air conditioning rattle. Then, one person started clapping. It was a woman in the front row, Jenna, my roommate, who'd held my hair back when I puked in the bathroom and sat with me while I cried over frozen pizzas. Her applause was slow and deliberate, like a heartbeat. After a few seconds, someone else joined her. Then two more. Then a whole section of nursing students rose to their feet, and the sound swelled until it filled every corner of that room. I didn't cry. I'd done my crying on the bathroom floor, on the dorm room carpet, on the sticky vinyl seat of the bus to the credit union. What I felt now was something else. A clean, bright emptiness. Like a room that had finally been cleared of all the furniture nobody wanted to admit was broken. Dean Henderson stepped back to the microphone. She didn't say anything to the audience. She just put her hand on my shoulder and whispered, "You've got 10 more minutes if you want them, Emma. This is still your graduation. What happens next is up to you." I looked at the letter. I looked at the security officer. I looked at the investigator with her briefcase full of evidence I hadn't even seen yet. And then I looked at my family, still frozen in row 7 like wax figures in a museum of bad decisions. "I think," I said, my voice crackling through the speakers, "there's one more thing I need to read." And from the pocket of my graduation gown, I pulled out my phone. The screen was lit up with an audio file, 22 minutes long, labeled MOM and Dad March 15th. The one where they'd admitted everything. The one where my dad had said, "She'll get over it, Linda. She's always gotten over it." I hit play. The audio started playing before anyone could move. My dad's voice filled the auditorium first. He sounded tired, a little annoyed, the way he always did after a long shift at the plant. "Would you just calm down, Linda? I told you, I moved the money." "I know you moved it, Mike. I'm the one who signed the transfer authorization." My mom's voice was sharper than the syrupy tone she used in public. This was the real Linda, the one who didn't bother with her church lady mask at home. "But Emma called today. She said the bursar's office sent her a notice." "So what?" "Tell her it's a clerical error." "I already did." She didn't sound like she believed me. "She'll get over it, Linda. She's always gotten over it." The silence in the auditorium was so heavy you could have cut it with a butter knife. 3,000 people, and not a single cough, not a whisper. They were all staring at row 7. At my father, whose face was turning the color of old brick. At my mother, whose hands were pressed flat against her chest like she was having a heart attack. And at my brother, whose fingers were trembling so hard he dropped his graduation program. "She's not a child anymore, Mike. She's going to figure it out eventually." "Figure out what?" "That we used 58 grand to give her brother a real shot? Come on. That money was mine and yours before it was hers. We earned it. We saved it. If I want to put it into Richie's business, that's my call. He's got an actual future. He's building something. What's Emma gonna do? Wipe old people's chins for 30 years? You think she needs a degree for that?" I let the recording play. Every word. Every pause. Every ugly, dismissive syllable. I'd listened to this file dozens of times in my dorm room, sitting cross-legged on my bed with my earbuds in, trying not to throw up. I'd memorized the exact moment my mom's voice softened into reluctant agreement. I knew the part coming up, the part where my brother walked into the room and joined them. And I let it play. "Hey, Dad. Hey, Mom. What's going on?" "Nothing, baby. We're just talking about your sister's school stuff." "Oh. Is she, like, freaking out about the money thing?" "A little. But you know Emma. She'll be fine." "Yeah. Look, I promise, okay? Once Next Gen goes full launch, I'm gonna pay back every cent. With interest. She can go back to school next year, I'll even cover it myself. See, Linda? The kid's got a plan. I just hope you're right, Mike. I'm always right. Now, who wants burgers?" That was it. That was the conversation where my entire life got decided over ground chuck and whether to get fries or onion rings. I stopped the recording and set my phone on the podium. My hand was shaking, but my voice wasn't. That was the surprising part. After 3 months of imagining this moment, of rehearsing it alone in front of the bathroom mirror, I'd been terrified I'd break down. But standing there with the microphone and the bright lights and the entire graduating class of the nursing school behind me, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Calm. Like I'd finally stopped running. That was March 15th, I said into the microphone. 3 weeks after I got the first overdue notice from the bursar's office. I was working a 12-hour shift at the diner when it came in. You know the one off Route 9? The one with the sign that says good food cheap talk? I was bussing tables for $9 an hour plus tips, thinking I was just a few credits away from my RN license. And then I opened that envelope, and it said I owed $57,800, and if I didn't pay it by May 1st, I wouldn't graduate. I paused. The auditorium was still dead silent. 2 days later, I went to the bank. I told them I thought there'd been a mistake. That my college fund was supposed to have over $58,000 in it, and I couldn't understand where it went. They pulled the statements, and they showed me 5 withdrawals over 8 months, all authorized by Linda Brooks and Michael Brooks. Every single one going to a business account registered under NextGen Logistics Solutions LLC. My brother's company. I turned to look at row 7. My mom was sobbing now, loud, ugly sobs that echoed through the hall. People around her were leaning away, like she was contagious. My dad had his head down, his big hands gripping the armrests so hard I could see the whites of his knuckles from 30 feet away. And my brother. My brother was looking directly at me. And for the first time in his entire life, he wasn't smirking. He wasn't grinning. He wasn't spinning some story about how this was all going to work out. He just looked small. You want to know the funny thing? I said. If they had asked me, I probably would have said yes. If my dad had sat me down and said, Emma, your brother needs this money, and we think it's the right thing for the family, I would have been angry. I would have cried. But I probably would have said okay. Because that's what I did. That's what I always did. I said okay. I said it when they needed someone to watch Richie after school. I said it when they needed help paying the property tax that one year. I said it when they told me I couldn't go to the state soccer finals because Richie had his business pitch competition the same weekend. I was the daughter who said okay. The one who didn't make trouble. The one who would get over it. I picked up the letter again. The same letter Dean Henderson had read 10 minutes ago. I unfolded it slowly, the paper crinkling through the speakers. So, I didn't tell them I knew. I didn't confront them. I didn't scream or threaten to sue or call some lawyer. I just collected every piece of evidence I could find. Bank statements. Transfer confirmations. Emails between my dad and my brother discussing the tuition reallocation project. This recording. And then, 6 weeks ago, I walked into Dean Henderson's office and I said, I'm not going to be paying my tuition, because my family stole it. But I'm going to show up at graduation anyway. And if you give me a chance, I'd like to read something. I looked at the dean. She nodded at me, slow and solemn, her eyes glistening. This letter, I said, is the letter I wrote to myself. It's all the things I never said. All the times I said okay when I wanted to scream. All the mornings I woke up at 4 a.m. to work a shift before class, telling myself it was just temporary, that my parents would help me when I really needed it. This is me, not getting over it. I read the letter. Every word. I won't repeat the whole thing here, because some things are just for me. But I will tell you the part that made the crowd go completely, utterly still. The part where I said, I wanted to be a nurse because when I was 7 years old, I watched my grandma die in a hospital bed, and the only person who treated her like a human being was an RN named Patricia. She held my hand and told me my grandma was going somewhere peaceful, and that she'd be proud of me no matter what I did with my life. No one in my family ever said that to me. No one ever told me they'd be proud. They just told me to be patient. To understand. To wait my turn. I've been waiting my turn for 22 years. Today, my turn ends. By the time I finished, my mom wasn't crying anymore. She was just sitting there with her mouth slightly open, her mascara streaked down her cheeks like two muddy rivers. My dad hadn't moved. His hands were still gripping the armrests, but his shoulders were shaking. And my brother had his face buried in his hands, his graduation program crumpled on the floor at his feet. The oddest thing happened then. I started to walk away from the microphone, back toward my seat with my classmates, and someone in the back of the auditorium started clapping. Just one person. Then two. Then a whole section. Then the entire nursing school stood up, all 130 of them, and the sound of their applause was like nothing I'd ever heard. It wasn't polite. It wasn't the kind of clapping you do at these things because you're supposed to. It was angry. Righteous. The sound of people who knew exactly what it felt like to be told to wait their turn. Dean Henderson stepped back to the microphone and waited for the noise to settle. She adjusted her glasses and peered out at the audience like a judge about to deliver a verdict. "I've been at this institution for 34 years, she said. "I've seen a lot of things. Students who overcame incredible obstacles. Families who sacrificed everything to get their kids through school. And, unfortunately, I've seen the opposite. The letter Miss Brooks asked me to read is, I believe, one of the most important documents ever submitted to this office. Not because of what it reveals about her family's failures, but because of what it reveals about her character. This is a young woman who, when faced with a devastating and unjust situation, did not lash out. Did not seek revenge. She simply asked for the truth to be told, in her own voice, in her own time. That is not weakness. That is the definition of strength." She turned toward me. "Miss Brooks, I regret to inform you that I cannot award you your degree today. The university's financial records are clear, and your account remains unpaid." A murmur rippled through the crowd. "However," she continued, raising her voice over the noise, "I am pleased to announce that an anonymous donor, a member of this graduating class who wishes to remain unnamed, has established a scholarship fund in your name. The Emma Brooks Perseverance Scholarship. And I am authorized to tell you that your full tuition, all $57,800, has been covered." The place went nuts. I mean, completely nuts. People were shouting. My classmates were hugging me. Someone was crying so loud I could hear them over the din. I just stood there, stunned, until I felt a hand on my back. It was Jenna, my roommate, grinning like she'd just won the lottery. "Told you," she whispered. "I told you you weren't alone." I looked at her, and then I looked back at row 7. The security officer had moved down toward my parents, not to arrest them, just to stand there. To make sure they didn't come any closer. The fraud investigator from the credit union was talking quietly into her phone. My dad finally lifted his head, and for a second, our eyes met. I thought he'd look angry. I thought he'd look ashamed. But he just looked old. Like the weight of what he'd done had finally landed, and he didn't know how to carry it. My brother stood up. He opened his mouth, took a step toward the aisle, and for a moment I thought he was going to come up to the stage. Say something. Apologize. Maybe even make one of his slick little speeches about how he was going to fix everything. But he didn't say a word. He just turned around, walked to the side exit, and pushed through the door into the parking lot. I didn't watch him go. I got my nursing degree 4 months later, after a summer session paid for by the scholarship. The university waived the rest of the fees out of what I can only describe as institutional guilt. I never filed charges against my parents, though the credit union did open an investigation that I assume went somewhere, because 6 months later, my dad sold his old Ford to cover part of what he owed the bank. My mom still shows up at my apartment sometimes. She leaves apple pies on my doorstep with notes that say, "I love you." I don't answer the door. The pies go to my neighbor's dog, who seems to appreciate them more than I ever did. As for my brother, Richie, well. Here's the thing about guys who build companies on money that doesn't belong to them. Eventually, the money runs out. And when it does, so do the people. His business partners bailed. His investors sued. His LinkedIn profile now says entrepreneur in transition, which, from what I've heard, is the 25-year-old version of unemployed and living in my parents' basement. I don't know if my family learned anything. I don't know if my dad still thinks he was right, or if my mom still tells the ladies at church that everything's fine. I don't control that. I don't get to control that. But here's what I do know. I'm a registered nurse now. I work in the same kind of hospital where my grandma died, and every single day, I hold someone's hand and tell them they're going to be okay. And when I do, I think about Patricia, the RN who held mine when I was 7, and I hope she'd be proud. I think she would be. I think she'd say I finally stopped waiting my turn and just took it. And if you're listening to this, and someone in your life has been telling you to wait, to be patient, to understand, to sacrifice what you love for what they want, I want you to remember something. You don't owe anyone your future. Not your parents. Not your brother. Not anyone who makes you feel guilty for wanting something that's already yours. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't screaming. It's standing up, walking to the microphone, and letting the truth speak for itself. Even if your hands are shaking. Even if your family's sitting in row 7. Especially then.